Hello everybody. So this lecture, this talk is about Roman mosaics, and away we go. This is the first one that I want to show you. It's a Hellenistic one, meaning that it is from the 2nd century BC rather than a later Roman one. We'll be looking at the Roman ones in a short while, but I wanted to show you this one because it's what the Roman ones is, the kind of way that the Roman ones were done. It's the origins in terms of style and method of the Roman ones that we're going to be looking at. It comes from Greece and is Hellenistic. Means it's late Greek. It means it's that period of Greek art after the classical period and from after the Greek Empire split up. And this one is rather beautiful, so we'll talk about it in detail in a little while. So here it is with some of the ways that mosaics were done. So with this one, which is a mix of different types of mosaic work, we have opus tessellatum, and as it says up there, it's the Latin name for the technique of Greek and Roman mosaics that are made from tesserae that are bigger than 4 millimeters. And tesserae, one tessera, lots of tesserae, are the little tiles that can be made out of ceramic or glass or stone of various different sorts, and all cut to shape to fit into the mosaic. And the finer mosaics are called opus vermiculatum. And it's like vermicelli, it's worms. It's very, very fine mosaic with cubes of less than 4 millimeters or thereabouts. And these are generally small panels that are made to go in the center of a much larger mosaic. They're made to be the central focal point. And they were made elsewhere. They were made in workshops and in a different place and brought to the place where the main mosaic is being made and placed in the centre of the floor. Most of these mosaics are to go on floors. One or two rare ones are to go on walls. Nowadays in the museums and art galleries, they're nearly always put vertically onto the wall now so that we can see them more easily. So this Hellenistic one, here's a zoomed in version of it. It's absolutely wonderfully done. It has on its eyes there, it has a red in the corner. Its eyes are staring at you, this tiger. And over on the left-hand side, a beautiful image of an idealized Greek young man with wings. And if we zoom in, we can see the details of this. So if we look at the beast here, we can see that its teeth are shaded and its eyes have got the red in the corner. Looks quite friendly in some ways apart from that. And over here we've got the male figure with lights in the eyes, and you can see on this the way that the mosaicists have arranged the tesserae to show the planes, the angles of the face. You can see the lines coming down here with small tesserae up here and larger ones down here to get that change in angle, that width across the cheek that isn't there by the eyes. And little bits around here, around the nostrils, the tesserae go in a different way, across between the nose and the corner of the mouth there, and they change colour and tone very, very gently as they go down the side of the cheek. So you can see the dark here through to this pink, this greyish pink, and into whites and even pale blues on the highlight of the cheekbone. We come down through the pinks and the yellows to purplish shades underneath and a dark line to separate the chin from the neck. And then up this side of the face, light around the mouth to show you the edge of the mouth in the dark shadow by the side of the nose, the roundness of the chin, and then this reflected light onto the face that comes down this side of the face. It's very, very cleverly done, and we will see this about all of these mosaics. They're all very, very sophisticated in the way that they're produced. This one is a Roman mosaic then, and it's from the 1st century AD, and it's from Herculaneum, which is near to Pompeii, and was completely covered up when the volcano exploded, erupted in AD 79. And this is another really cleverly done mosaic. You can see on the left is Neptune and on the right is Amphitrite. Neptune has a trident. You can just see it sticking up here. I'll show you another slide of it in a minute. Amphitrite has a distaff, which is a symbol of femininity, symbol of the female line in heraldry. It's something that you put a wadge of wool onto to draw the fibres down to twist them into one weavable piece of string, I suppose, of thread. So we have here this wonderful figure of Neptune, and behind him we have the creamy yellow colour of the thicker tesserae, wider tesserae that go to make up the background, and the phenomenal pattern work that goes on around here. And if we now look at the interior of this room, you can see that this would be where paintings were, where frescoes were, and they've fallen off the walls. But you can see where the mosaic is in this place. And it's thought to be on the wall because there isn't room here for people, diners, to relax on their beds, reclining to eat their finger foods. They ate finger foods on these reclining beds. Not room enough for them to eat and look at a mosaic on the floor, so that's probably why this one was on the wall. And this whole room has been severely damaged. There are problems with Pompeii and Herculaneum in that at one time they weren't properly excavated, and in the medieval period tunnellers dug down and made tunnels to try and get at the artworks and anything that was worth any money in there. Some of the tunnellers actually, they had to tunnel quite deep down and would tunnel across to rooms. Some of them were actually trapped in collapses of their tunnels, and there are some remains, human remains of them down there. But they tended to tunnel through and pick out what they could, and destroyed a lot of the archaeology at the same time. This is a closer up view of Neptune and Amphitrite. You can see her distaff more clearly, and you can see his trident more clearly. Looking at the large tesserae for the background and how beautifully they set off the smaller tesserae of the figures, we have them enclosed within this house-shaped area, and she's propped up against something there. And if you look at his head, the colours of his beard and his hair are all those that you might expect from a sea god. They're greens and blues. And if you look at his torso, you can see how carefully the mosaicist has brought the mosaic lines down his rib cage there, and in the centre to define the other half of his body. You can see the wonderful tones around his belly button, and then as we drop down to the thigh, the lines and the lines of the arm here, vertical lines of tesserae to show that shine on his body. And then when we come to Amphitrite, to make her arms look rounder, I think, we've got the tesserae going diagonally rather than straight up and down. And they go diagonally across part of her torso here and here. And I love the way this zooms around her breasts. Her breasts are defined, they're very high, very small, very high, and defined by this white line here and this white line there around them, as well as by the shading. If you look at Neptune, the shading on him is much deeper, much darker than it is on Amphitrite. And there's the corner of it, so that you can see that inset are various things as a border, as a frame, if you like, pebbles or shells, that kind of thing, as well as mosaic framing lines in different colours. A lot of these mosaics were done with pattern books. There aren't any left as far as I know. I could be wrong there, but I don't think there are any left. But you can see across the whole of the Roman world that the designs are very similar. They don't change an awful lot. There are random ones and there are very strange ones. And there are some which are done in an inferior way, where the artists were not as well trained or not as gifted. And there are some which are really sophisticated, but often the kinds of images are very, very similar. They're not exactly the same as each other. So we presume that the concept of slavish copying was not there. The artists could do it as they wanted, but the ideas are there. And they've probably come from some kind of pattern that would be sent around, copied around. So now I want to have a look at the mosaics in Hadrian's villa in Tivoli, which is near Rome. There are some details about Hadrian's villa, the date of it, 2nd century AD, and the fact that Hadrian governed his empire from there, and he used it as his official residence. So it had a large court. A lot of people lived there permanently, and loads of bureaucrats, as it says there. Everybody that's running and organising the state would have been there at some point. They would have been expected nice places, nice homes to live in, and it was in constant contact with Rome, Hadrian's villa, via a postal service. So we have a very big complex of buildings, lots and lots of buildings, larger, Hadrian's villa, larger than the city of Pompeil, and quite a lot of it still unexcavated. Quite a lot of Pompeii and Herculaneum are still unexcavated as well. So we've got a lot more as time goes on to see coming out from these places. So several thousand people are thought to have lived there. The mosaics are splendid from Hadrian's villa. This one is showing doves drinking from a bowl, and this kind of design for a bowl of water, it's not absolutely accurate in terms of its perspective of the ellipse and so on. It rises up there and is flatter here, so that we can see more of the interior, more of the water inside. So it isn't quite accurate, and this inaccuracy was probably not even considered at the time. Nobody says that you've got to draw these things absolutely perfectly, and what you want to do is see what's in the bowl. And this idea, this way of doing things, continues right the way through the early Christian period into the 6th, 7th centuries AD, and we'll talk about that kind of work when we get to that era. So this mosaic is it's in Rome. It's in a museum in Rome and is an emblema. It is a very, very finely opus vermiculatum work, finely done work, which would have been placed within a wider mosaic. And it's now on a wall so that you can see it, and would have been probably on a floor. It's got a lovely decorative surround, which is rather spectacular. And there is a detail of it, and you can see the way that the water is done, the wonderful tones of greys and pinks that are in the water, and the way the bird's feathers, the lie of the feathers, is suggested by the lines of tesserae. You can even see the claws on the edge, and this bird leaning down to drink, and the wonderful variety of different colours that we have through here, from the greys to the yellowish colours, and then these darker reddy brown colours. Colour was important in some mosaics, but there was also a fashion for monochrome mosaic floors, and there are quite a number of these in Hadrian's villa, and I've given you a variety to look at there. The decorative motifs are often quite similar, but they feel almost like a Persian carpet across the floor, some of them, and the Romans really loved black and white, and they often did pictorial representations of dogs and such like in black and white mosaic. The one on the top right there has a kind of swastika base, which we'll talk about later, to the design here that runs around the edges, and the swastika itself was a sign of good luck, which is why it was picked up by the Nazis. It's a sign of good fortune. It's used in faiths throughout the world. It's very commonly there in Buddhism and in Christian art as well, and we'll come to that in a little while. So this shows you the larger mosaic pieces that were used in this kind of monochrome mosaic, but the splendid geometries that are involved, and some plant forms as well. These wonderful curling kind of horn shapes that we get, volutes, and then these repeated patterns all around the sides. You can see here how this fits into that wall. You can see the walls there, and you can see the way that it's given a border, almost like we would expect a carpet to be. And this is a different one. They have a similarity to them, but this is a different one. So there we have a few of those, and now back to colour. Actually, before we go back to colour, I just want to talk about the complexity of things like this central bit here, with the line here coming over that line and under that line. And then this one goes over that one and under that one. There's a lot going on in these. When we look later on at Celtic art, we will see that things like these are thought to represent faces, stylized faces, and you can almost make that out to be a face with a nose and a mouth and eyebrows maybe. Whether it has come about with that idea in mind, or whether it is simply a pattern, an ornament, I don't know in this case. I don't suppose anybody knows in this case. So we're now going to look at another important mosaic from Hadrian's villa. It's in a museum in Germany, in Berlin, and it is on the left a tiger attacking a centaur, and on the right the centaur is about to kill the tiger with a large stone, and to the right of him is this lion which has been already killed. This beast up here is superb. This leopard is superbly done. This is a very finely made mosaic. We get a lot of these stories. We get a lot of stories of the legends of both Greece and Rome. We get fanciful creatures fighting it out, battling it out. We get actual battles in these mosaics. Some of them seem to us to be quite bloodthirsty at times, and not the kind of thing that we would want to decorate our homes with. But they seem to have liked the kind of element of narrative that's involved. So looking a bit closer in, you can see on the left there the centaur with a skin over his arm, and this wonderfully shaded block that he's about to hurl at the tiger. You can see the way that these that the arms are shown with the dark lines running around them, and then the light. It's very, very three-dimensional. Look at the way the light comes down on this side of the arm there, and the way that the shadow is cast, and then you've got light on the shoulder. Very, very cleverly observed, I think. And then, of course, the torso idealized. And over on the other side is the leopard that's up to the top left-hand side of him. And you can see here the colours. There's pink under its belly. There's shading on its fur to give it that wonderful feeling of movement that it has. Huge paws with claws on, and the beauty of this little tree against the background. And there we have zoomed in a little bit more to the centaur that's been attacked by the tiger and is dying. And you can see the clever way that this horse's hoof on the centaur is depicted, and the decorative manner in which these little fronds of foliage are put, and the trees, the small trees. Look at his hair flowing over his shoulder. Look at the changing colour as we go down to the hands. Look at the blood dripping everywhere, and the way that his human part of his body is in these flesh colours, and the tesserae wind themselves around there and go over the shape of his belly, and then the way that they have turned to this pinky brown colour and are going around the body, the horse's body that he's got. These are remarkable works. And another one showing theatrical masks of tragedy and comedy, and they are really quite brilliantly done. Look at the colours, the huge pupils and the colour of the iris around, the light and shade on these ivy leaves, the way that the light and shade is done on these bits here, the wonderful colours of pale blues and greys and pinks, and the twisty hair hanging down. So, to look at some others now from different places, and some of these will be from Pompeii. This next one is from Pompeii. This portrait of a woman. It's very, very famous, this beautiful portrait of a woman. And it is in very fine mosaic, and was probably, it's thought to have been displayed at the centre of a bigger opus sectile mosaic. So we'll have a look at opus sectile. This is where stones are cut of different sizes to fit into the shapes, and this is an example of that kind of thing here. This is from the 2nd century CE, the 2nd century of the Common Era, 2nd century after Christ. And you can see the way that the bits are cut to fit into the spaces. So they're not tiny little tesserae, they're made differently. And it's thought that this one was to fit inside something like that. This portrait of a woman shows a wonderful individuality, and it's typical of Roman artwork. Roman artwork it does tend to be very individual. They like to pick out individual qualities of heads and faces for certain. And you can see her hair is kind of gently waved, and with this very straight parting in the middle. And then as your eyes move down her face, you can see that her nose is not absolutely symmetrical. None of us have fully symmetrical faces. Her nose is not fully symmetrical, neither is her mouth, and you can just see her teeth through the lips. And you can see her earrings. There is a feeling almost of Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring about this. The tesserae form the shapes of above her eyebrows. They form the three-dimensional qualities of the eyes. They span out, as we talked about before, across the cheek and round the cheekbones. They form the line that goes over the lips and so on. And they're outlined down here with this outline that comes all the way around and then goes to form the chin with a little bit of shadow down there. If we look over at this other side here, you can see that there is decorative pattern work on the garment that she's wearing. And she's wearing these lovely They look like pearls. And the tesserae come round her neck to show the cylindrical nature of her neck. You can see this line of lighter tesserae to highlight her against the background. And you can see in the background the way the tesserae are darker here and get lighter out towards the edges. It's remarkable. Here we have Beware of the Dog mosaics. These are usually in monochrome, usually in black and white. The one on the left, well, actually both of these, they've got red collars, and the one on the left has got a red lead. And it's Beware of the Dog, and others that do the same thing. These are all from Pompeii. So they obviously loved their dogs. Despite the fact that the one on the left is on the floor, it kind of shows an open door with the dog in front of it, chained to it. Very neatly done that. And the one on the right, if you just look at it, all curled up, asleep on the doorstep. Have to be careful of these dogs. This one is a marine mosaic from Pompeii. Pompeii was by the sea, and Romans absolutely adored their fish meals. They ate all sorts of seafood, and their fish sauce, they were obsessive about fish sauce. There is even a mosaic of an urn of fish sauce somewhere, which is identified by writing on the outside. This is spectacularly done. The details of the fish show exactly, if you know about fish, exactly what kind of fish these are. The way that they are drawn in mosaic shows their movement, particularly of things like this here, the line of that moving there. We've got octopuses and squid and flat fish and they absolutely were obsessed with fish. There are a lot of fish mosaics. If we look at this one in greater detail, you can see how cleverly it's done, how the background is actually all horizontal dark tesserae, but where it goes round a fish, it makes an outline and then it picks up in horizontal lines around that. Here we've got a number of lines that go around this particular fish, which kind of help to show its movement. And the way that the sparkle of the fish is made with these different tones of tesserae, which are like a tessera for each scale. And there we have some wonderful little elements. This bird at the side of the pond, like a little kingfisher, the long beak, and this tail wrapping around. Over here, a very grumpy looking fish, and you can see the way the tesserae are done all around its fin at the top. The movement in this here, such a lot of realism going on. And then we jump to one in monochrome, which is not very realistic. This is a skeleton of a servant holding two pitchers, presumably the skeleton bringing in the wine. If you look at his hips, one doesn't feel that they are particularly accurate. It's almost amusing. It's a bit of a memento mori. It's to remind you that actually, a lot of Roman art is to remind you that you only get one chance to live, and you might as well live it up. And if you're going to end up like the skeleton, you might as well have some wine to help yourself over the initial hurdle of life before you die. And they liked to show lots of lovely food and lots of drink and things like that to show you that you should actually enjoy yourself. The Alexander mosaic is from a major house, a really important house called the House of the Faun in Pompeii. It's named after a sculpture of a faun, and it's from about 100 BC. It's thought to be a copy of a Greek painting. It could well be a copy of the Greek painting. We haven't got the original Greek painting, but we know that Alexander in particular is design, the design of his head, if you like, is very similar to Greek work. The Battle of Alexander against Darius was one time a very popular theme. In fact, it has been right the way through the Renaissance as well. And the Hellenistic painting that it was originally based on was probably full of dynamic images. There were a lot of Greek paintings in the Hellenistic period, and we don't have any of them left. They were wall paintings predominantly, and they were done on kind of wattle and daub buildings and haven't survived. So we know about them really largely from paintings on pots and from copies like this. This is a fantastic piece of work. We have here Alexander. We have Darius on a chariot. All of Darius was the king of the Persians and Alexander of the Greeks. And we see all the Persian spears pointing towards Alexander. They've all turned around. They're trying to defend their king, and they've all turned around, and they're actually running away from Alexander, who's charging forward. We've lost a lot of the mosaic from this area here, but there are reinterpretations of it on the internet, if you look for them, that show you how it probably did look at one time. So this is Darius, and his chariot has turned. This man here, we'll see him in detail in a minute, is whipping the horses and getting them to move on as quickly as they can. And the horses are turning. They're in the process of turning round. There's a horse that's heading from right to left, a horse that's heading from left to right. It's facing towards us and looking what's happening. This horse has got its rear towards us and is actually running that way, a horse rearing up. This is chaos. And it's typical of paintings of the Hellenistic period that all this chaos is represented. A vast amount of action and power and activity, where really only the main protagonists are drawn out of the background so that you can see them clearly. This man here is the brother, or thought to represent the brother of Darius, and he's trying to protect his king. And down here is a man who is dying, and he's holding his shield, and he can see himself reflected in his shield down there. So let's have a look at some details of this mosaic. There is Darius. The Persians, by the way, if I just flip back to this, the Persians are recognisable by the fact that they wore trousers, and the Greeks are recognisable by the fact that they don't. They wear their little skirts. So here is Darius, and you can see the light and shade on his garment there. You can see the cape fastened with, it looks like a torque, an animal-headed gold thing round his neck. He's got this wonderful, strange hat on, and behind him, the man with the whip who's egging on the horses this is incredibly delicately done. This whip and the way it crosses the spear, and the feeling of perhaps fear but determination on his face. Darius doesn't want to be turned around. His soldiers have turned him around and are taking him away, and he's reaching out towards Alexander as if he wants to continue the battle, or if he's entreating Alexander to be kind to the people that are left behind, perhaps. Alexander was famous for being quite kind to prisoners. This is Darius's brother then here. He seems to have what's like chain mail on him, and his horse with the horse's accoutrements, and this horse here with its mouth gaping and its eyes rolling. Another male figure, see the hair there and the eye, and they've all got these particular kinds of hats on. And there is a close-up of Darius, so you can see his eyes wide with shock that he's being defeated. And you can see actually the reflections on his eyes as well that make the eyes look very liquid and three-dimensional. And the way that his headdress is wrapped around his head, you can see all the folds of the fabric, and the way that one lot of fabric is tucked into the other. You can see more clearly the animal-headed kind of torque that he's got on. And this wonderful hair, the way that his hair, his black hair, flicks up against the flat tesserae behind. Here is Alexander. The head of Alexander is based on Hellenistic sculptures and classical sculptures of Alexander himself. He's got a very, very kind of Roman nose, even though he was Greek, and he's got this hair, a thick mane of hair, which he was famous for and which most of the sculptures show. He's got a very complex set of armour on, and this on the front here is the Medusa, who turns all her opponents to stone, and he's got it there as a symbol for, I think, probably the fear that he incites in the people that he's fighting against. We have helmeted people, and the horses with their rolling eyes are everywhere. This horse with its eyes, it's almost got a human expression on its face. It's got its little fringe and its hair behind. Very dynamic, full of power and movement, and a lot of contrasting tesserae. The dark areas are really quite dark. Look at the eyelash that sticks out against the background there. It's full of these tiny details. His eyes are enormous. There's almost a manga feel to the eyes, and this highlight on his cheek is quite contrasted against the darkness around there. It makes him look incredibly positive and powerful. And there is a sword from the base of it. And I shall show you a few more now, just a few more details. To the right is the actual whole one, which you can see in miniature with an arrow pointing to where the detail has come from. You can see here this Persian's trousers and his shoes. You can see the horse's teeth. And this is the man who's dying from down this area here. You can see his hand holding up his shield, and you can see his face. He's looking at himself as he passes away. There is a figure to the right-hand side of this mosaic. This mosaic would have been on the floor. It would have been a floor mosaic, and it would have been a particular way up, so that as you walk into the room, you would see the bottom part of it first, and then it would open out into the top part of it. Now, in the museum, it's on the wall. Some of these have been restored. They've got gaps where there is no mosaic left, and sometimes they've got bits of painting on to fill in areas where we want to see what the mosaic might have been like. But look at this fear on the man's face as the horses gallop over him. And there's the brother that's sacrificing himself. It's such powerful mosaics. Look at that eyebrow and the eye and the dark lines around the eye, and then the light bits. So other things from different places, it tells you on the screen where they are from if you want to look them up. I like this one because it's got the water in this large basin, again with its odd perspective for an ellipse where it's flatter at the front and raised at the back, so that we can see what's inside, and we can see this leaf that's fallen into the water there, and these beautiful birds with their tails hanging down. This one looks like an ordinary pigeon that's having a sip from the water on the top. The light and shade on the sides of this this carved block of stone, and then the cat at the bottom there with its claws ready to pounce. It desperately wants those birds. This is the Triumph of Neptune, and he's on this chariot and he's pulled by two hippocamps. They are the heads and front half of a horse, and a sea dragon or a sea snake for the bottom half. And I just like this one. I've just chosen a few now that I think are really rather wonderfully done. I like the way that the cape, that Neptune's cape goes over his head like that. It's like a halo, and it indicates his divine nature, and that concept does not go away. And we get it in Christian art later. And we've got a wonderful decorative kind of almost a key pattern, what's known as a Greek key pattern all around the edge. And there we have a dolphin and the hippocampi, the way that these are done with this kind of almost interlacing of brown to light green to dark green, and the way that the darker areas are integrated with the lighter areas by doing this. So there is a feeling of shading going on rather than lines of tesserae. They seem to blend more when you see them from a distance. Very three-dimensional hooves, and the line goes around the hooves in a rather neat way. And there is Neptune. And I wanted to show the white pieces of mosaic behind and the way that they go around his cape, and then otherwise are just straight across. This place, Piazza Armerina in Sicily, has got the most fantastic mosaics, a lot of mosaics in this place, and it's worth looking up on the internet if you want to see more of them. There are quite a few online for you to see. And a lot of mosaics, a number of mosaics were made in North Africa, and the North African mosaicists, the artists and craftsmen, were very clever and known to be very good at what they did. So we know that they came into Italy and worked in Italy as well, and certainly in southern Italy and in Sicily. And they were very clever, very brilliant at what they did. And this particular villa has got bikini-clad ladies playing with beach balls in them, which seems so modern and up to date as to be quite astonishing. They are running around on a floor here as well. They're not just against an abstract background, they actually have a floor to be on. And there we see this one seems to be playing a musical instrument of some sort. And this one, I don't know, is she exercising with little ladies' dumbbells? Quite possibly. The picture I like best is that one with the lady on the right, with the girl on the right lying down on them. So they're life-size figures. They're on the floor, but they're life-size figures, and her lying down there shows you just how realistic they actually are. And another few to look at. We have here warriors going hunting. They have shields, and we've got these animals that they're hunting. This is a carriage of some sort. It's got wooden wheels that are pinned in planks and fixed on to the axles with these things here. You can see how they're done very clearly. You can see the rib cage of these oxen that are pulling it. And you can see here the decorative motifs on their uniforms, on their garments, if you like. And there is a swastika. I said I'd mention the swastikas again. This lion is ripping apart a deer and it's bleeding. It's again, it's quite kind of gory. The swastika, an auspicious sign, and it comes into Christian art later. And I just put a few swastikas down here because as we do Celtic art and maybe Buddhist art later, and we look at the art of the different faiths, we look at the art of the different places and different times, swastikas appear all the time. And we only really think now of the Nazi swastika, but we shouldn't really, because it's such an auspicious symbol. So on this side here and at the bottom is the swastika. It points towards the right there. And this one is the swastika. There's the word there, and it points the other way, and it's on this side. Other names for the swastika, the Gammadian and the Fylfot. This is related to Celtic art. The Gammadian is related to Christian art, and it's because that sign is the sign of Gamma there, the Greek letter of the alphabet. And we'll talk about this later when we do Christian art, but Gamma is the third letter of the Greek alphabet and therefore also stands for the Trinity. Some more brilliant mosaics for you to have a little look at. You can pause this if you want to have a closer look at them. We've got a boar being slaughtered. The spear is going into it here and its tusk is around the spear. This guy looks a bit surprised that he's managed to kill it. There's a man here with, I don't know, a stone, expecting to hurl it maybe. And is this man being caught, gored by the boar? He seems to have a wound in his leg. You can see his kind of leggings that he's got on, and his dog there baring its teeth. The boar's feet are in water. There's a stream. There's another dog attacking it from behind. The same scene on the left in more detail because it's closer up, and on the right a boating scene with fishes in the water, and somebody operating the ropes to get the sails up or down. Various things happening, getting off the boat on this gangplank and so on. And that's what these mosaics look like on the floor, sunk a bit but still in extraordinary condition. Putty, little figures, little boys with wings, one putto, lots of putty, cherubs if you like, and they're picking grapes here, and this is a reference to Dionysus, who was the god of wine, but he was also the god of an afterlife, and Christians adopted the motif of the putty, the little cherubs collecting the grapes, as it says there, as a reference to the wine of the Eucharist. So we're going to see these little angelic figures collecting grapes as we move on and look at Christian art later. Here's that lion that I told you about that's killing the deer. Or is it a tiger that's doing it? And the Romans loved geometric patterns, geometry absolutely everywhere. So we'll have a look at those. This is from Portugal. I don't think I could live with that on my floor. I think that is just too... he heaves up, it heaves around, but it's a very interesting design. And there are some others which are monochrome. We see the swastika crosses, or are they sauostikas, pointing to the left. And they are in the centre of these and make a key pattern all the way along, as well as being here. This is from a house called the House of the Swastika Cross. And this is from Cyprus. These wonderful patterns, glorious colours in that one, a woven pattern. And there we are with an emblem in the centre of finer mosaic. With all the colours, look at the way that the patterns come together. And here you see the kind of ruggedness. They're not absolutely perfect, these patterns. The centre 5 here are not quite the same as the centre 5 there, because it is mosaic. It isn't absolutely defined with rulers as such, but the geometry other than that is absolutely perfect. If you look carefully, this is wider across here and goes across the whole edge there, and then these similar shapes come behind and behind here, behind that one, And here we've got like a single row and a single row here, but on the edge we've got this wider row of tesserae. The swastika shape again giving rise to this pattern, which is very, very common. And the difference in colours, this reddish colour here and the brownish colour here, and then the greys to complement it on the outside. These are quite astonishing. This is a typical form of the shape that we get a lot on the pattern mosaics. It's this corner here on the box shape. Again, some of these are very three-dimensional and really quite disturbing if you were to walk across them. And then finally, I wanted to have a quick look at how to make your own. I've done this with groups of students, and it nearly always works brilliantly. You just get a plastic ice cream container, and you have to grease the inside or your mosaic won't come out. So you grease the inside with butter, like as if you were making a cake. You do a design on tissue paper, and you press the tissue paper in place in the bottom of the container. And then you've got your bits of broken ceramic. You can buy tesserae, actually, off the internet if you want to get real proper square ones or glass ones or whatever. Or you can break your own. You can break tiles. You can get cheap tiles, buy up cheap tiles from places and break them. Or you can cut them square, actually, with a glass cutter. That's very easy to do as well. You can score them with a glass cutter and then just nibble them off, which works very nicely. And then you put them face downwards over your drawing in the pattern that you want, face downwards, because you're going to pour the concrete on top of them, so the back is what will face you. Then you mix some sand and cement. It can be plaster if it's only going to be used inside, but it needs to be sand and cement if it's going to be used outside. The Romans used concrete. And you just pour it into your container to around 2 centimetres thick, and experiment first on a small scale so that you're not wasting materials. You pour it over and leave it to set. And then afterwards, it should come out very, very easily because you've greased the base. This was one that I made that came out very nicely. And you kind of knock it gently out of its container, and then you can get rid of the remains of the drawing with a damp sponge on top, and then you just grout it. And that's sufficient to make a mosaic for outside. And you can make, it'll be small. I mean, it's only going to be the size of an ice cream box, but you can make lots of them and put them together. And it's great fun to try and do it. You can use bits of old plastic. You can use all manner of bottle tops, whatever you want to make these mosaics. But if it's going to be outside, you have to bear in mind that the plastics, they will lose their colour and they will become brittle if they're in sunlight. So you have to remember that, but give it a go. It's good fun. There's lots of things on the internet about how to do it as well, though sometimes they make it more complicated really than it ever needs to be. And this slide, if you want to just pause on that, tells you another way of doing it. You can use a large ceramic tile and you can glue the pieces of mosaic, glue them, best with a glue that doesn't dissolve in water when it's set. But you can glue the pieces of mosaic carefully in place and then clean all the surface off and grout it. And that lasts for a long time as well. It's probably better indoors than out. But it's a much easier way of doing it. And you can do tabletops like that as well. It's good fun to do. It's really, really great to do. And here are some Roman ideas off the internet. They are ideas of the types of patterns that were used in Roman mosaics. And you can copy some of them off if you have a look at that on the internet and have a go yourself. Well, that's all for now. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry it's been a long time since I've done one of these and I get out of touch with it. So when I started off, I was umming and ahhing all over the place. I'm hoping to do more of them and more often. So again, thank you for listening and goodbye, everybody.